Chapter 23 of the Talisman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Talisman by Sir Walter Scott. Chapter 23. Mid these wild scenes enchantment weighs her hand, to change the face of the mysterious land, till the bewildering scenes around us seem the vain productions of a feverish dream, Astolfo, a romance. When the Knight of the Leopard awoke from his long and profound repose, he found himself in circumstances so different from those in which he had lain down to sleep, that he doubted whether he was not still dreaming, or whether the scene had not been changed by magic. Instead of the damp grass, he lay on a couch of more than oriental luxury, and some kind hands had, during his repose, stripped him of the cassock of chamois which he wore under his armour, and substituted a night dress of the finest linen and a loose gown of silk. He had been canopied only by the palm trees of the desert, but now he lay beneath a silken pavilion, which blazed with the richest colours of the Chinese loom, while a slight curtain of gauze, displayed around his couch, was calculated to protect his repose from the insects to which he had, ever since his arrival in these climates, been a constant and passive prey. He looked around, as if to convince himself that he was actually awake, and all that fell beneath his eye partook of the splendour of his dormitory. A portable bath of cedar, lined with silver, was ready for use, and steamed with the odours which had been used in preparing it. On a small stand of ebony beside the couch stood a silver vase, containing sherbet of the most exquisite quality, cold as snow, and which the thirst that followed the use of the strong narcotic rendered peculiarly delicious. Still further, to dispel the dregs of intoxication which it had left behind, the knight resolved to use the bath, and experienced in doing so a delightful refreshment. Having dried himself with napkins of the Indian wool, he would willingly have resumed his own coarse garments, that he might go forth to see whether the world was as much changed without as within the place of his repose. These, however, were nowhere to be seen, but in their place he found a Saracen dress of rich materials, with sabre and poniard, and all befitting an emir of distinction. He was able to suggest no motive to himself for this exuberance of care, excepting a suspicion that these attentions were intended to shake him in his religious profession, as indeed it was well known that the high esteem of the European knowledge and courage made the Soldan unbounded in his gifts to those who, having become his prisoners, had been induced to take the turban. Sir Kenneth, therefore, crossing himself devoutly, resolved to set all such snares at defiance, and that he might do so the more firmly, conscientiously determined to avail himself as moderately as possible of the attentions and luxuries thus liberally heaped upon him. Still, however, he felt his head oppressed and sleepy, and, aware, too, that his undress was not fit for appearing abroad, he reclined upon the couch, and was again locked in the arms of slumber. But this time his rest was not unbroken, for he was awakened by the voice of the physician at the door of the tent, inquiring after his health, and whether he had rested sufficiently. "May I enter your tent?" he concluded, "for the curtain is drawn before the entrance." "The master," replied Sir Kenneth, determined to show that he was not surprised in forgetfulness of his own condition, "need demand no permission to enter the tent of the slave." "But if I come not as a master?" said El Hakim, still without entering. "The physician," answered the knight, "hath free access to the bedside of his patient." "Neither come I now as a physician," replied El Hakim, "and therefore I still request permission ere I come under the covering of thy tent." "Whoever comes as a friend," said Sir Kenneth, "and such thou hast hitherto shown thyself to me, the habitation of the friend is ever open to him." "Yet once again," said the Eastern sage, after the periphrasatical manner of his countrymen, supposing that I come not as a friend." "Come as thou wilt," said the Scottish knight, somewhat impatient of this circumlocution. "Be what thou wilt, thou knowest well it is neither in my power nor my inclination to refuse thee entrance." "I come, then," said El Hakim, "as your ancient foe, but a fair and a generous one." He entered as he spoke, and when he stood before the bedside of Sir Kenneth, the voice continued to be that of Adonbec, the Arabian physician, but the form, dress, and features were those of Ilderim of Kurdistan, called Sheerkohf. Sir Kenneth gazed upon him as if he expected the vision to depart, like something created by his imagination. "Doth it so surprise thee," said Ilderim, "and thou an approved warrior, to see that a soldier knows something of the art of healing? I say to thee, Nazarene, that an accomplished cavalier should know how to dress his steed as well as how to ride him, how to forge his sword upon the stithy as well as how to use it in battle, how to burnish his arms as well as how to wear them, and, above all, how to cure wounds as well as how to inflict them." As he spoke, the Christian knight repeatedly shut his eyes, and while they remained closed, the idea of the Hakim, with his long flowing dark robes, high Tartar cap, and grave gestures, was present to his imagination. But so soon as he opened them, the graceful and richly gemmed turban, the light hauberk of steel rings entwisted with silver, which glanced brilliantly as it obeyed every inflection of the body, the features freed from their formal expression, less swarthy, and no longer shadowed by the mass of hair, now limited to a well trimmed beard, announced the soldier and not the sage. "Art thou still so much surprised?" said the Emir. "And hast thou walked in the world with such little observance as to wonder that men are not always what they seem? Thou thyself, art thou what thou seemest?" "No, by Saint Andrew!" exclaimed the knight, "for to the whole Christian camp I seem a traitor, and I know myself to be a true though erring man." "Even so I judged thee," said Ilderim, "and as we had eaten salt together, I deemed myself bound to rescue thee from death and contumely. But wherefore lie you still on your couch, since the sun is high in the heavens? Or are the vestments which my sumpter camels have afforded unworthy of your wearing?" "Not unworthy, surely, but unfitting for it," replied the Scot. "Give me the dress of a slave, noble Ilderim, and I will don it with pleasure. But I cannot brook to wear the habit of the free Eastern warrior with the turban of the Moslem." "Nazarene," answered the Emir, "thy nation so easily entertain suspicion that it may well render themselves suspect. Have I not told thee that Saladin desires no converts saving those whom the Holy Prophet shall dispose to submit themselves to his law? Violence and bribery are alike alien to his plan for extending the true faith. Hearken to me, my brother. When the blind man was miraculously restored to sight, the scales dropped from his eyes at the divine pleasure. Thinkest thou that any earthly leech could have removed them? No, such mediciner might have tormented the patient with his instruments, or perhaps soothed him with balsams and cordials, but dark as he was must the darkened man have remained, and it is even so with the blindness of the understanding. If there be those among the Franks who, for the sake of worldly liquor, have assumed the turban of the Prophet and followed the laws of Islam, with their own consciences be the blame. Themselves sought out the bait, it was not flung to them by the Soldan, and when they shall hereafter be sentenced, as hypocrites, to the lowest gulf of hell, below Christian and Jew, magician and idolater, and condemned to eat the fruit of the tree of Yacon, which is the head of demons, to themselves, not to the Soldan, shall their guilt and their punishment be attributed. Wherefore wear, without doubt or scruple, the vesture prepared for you, since, if you proceed to the camp of Saladin, your own native dress will expose you to troublesome observation, and perhaps to insult." "If I go to the camp of Saladin?" said Sir Kenneth, repeating the words of the Emir. "Alas, am I a free agent, and rather must I not go wherever